John Schneider is up for AL Manager of the Year. How do you feel about it? Do you trust him? Does he get a contract renewal? We'll talk about it on today's episode of Locked On Blue Jays.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. The big man, John Schneider, up for AL Manager of the Year. It will get announced next Tuesday. It sort of sparks a bigger conversation, and one I didn't necessarily think we would be starting to have already, but now's as good a time as any. How do you feel about him? Especially after what happened with Shane Bieber and him returning. Does John Schneider play a factor into all of this? I think there's a big conversation here because I think we've seen missteps. We've seen success. They were in the World Series. It's going to be interesting. As always, I'm Brayden Wasco. He's Carter First. You can find us on Twitter, Brayden5 Wasco. Carter First, too, as well on our main Twitter account at Locked On Jays. You can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Blue Jays. And if you're new here to YouTube, hit the subscribe button and leave a comment on everything we are talking about today because we love seeing your guys' comments, especially, sometimes when you guys go back and forth with each other, it brightens my day a little bit. Carter, my man, he's up for AL Manager of the Year. Hat tip to John. That's, that really is something for him personally. I know he's a guy that's team first, and it's all about the guys behind him and whatnot. But, it is always nice for somebody to receive a little bit of recognition. So, again, does he win it? Does he not win it? We'll find out Tuesday. But even to be nominated, I think he's going to be pretty happy with that and pretty humbled by that.
No, absolutely. He's that's something that you strive for as a manager. Again, that's at the end of this year. That's probably not what he was destined on. That's not the big goal at the end of the year. But it definitely is nice to get those personal accolades. We have seen John Schneider grow up as a manager throughout the previous years, from 2023 to 2024 into 2025. I think he has gotten better every single year. As for the other nominees, just want to go into this as well. You have Stephen Vogt from the Cleveland Guardians, and then you have Dan Wilson from the Seattle Mariners as well. The Cleveland Guardians, again, going on that crazy run to end the season, sneaking into the playoffs, winning their division. Again, didn't make too much noise, obviously. And then Dan Wilson, the Mariners GM, getting to the ALCS for the first time in a very long time. So credit to him as well. So these are probably the three shoe-ins, the three guys that I definitely expected to win this award. A lot of the time I find for AL Manager of the Year, or just, and again, Manager of the Year, whether it's AL or NL, it's not as much of like the manager making these crazy decisions. It's kind of based off of what the expectation was going into the year and then how the team finished at the end of the year. Just looking at these three teams, Cleveland overcoming the odds. The Seattle Mariners, again, they were a pretty good team last year as well, but not a lot of people, you could say, expected them to get to the ALCS, especially early on in the season when it was the Rangers division. The Astros division really didn't surge until the end of the year. Then there's obviously the Toronto Blue Jays, who nobody had making the playoffs. I didn't have making the playoffs. Brayden had them sneaking in. The win total is at 76.5 wins. Yeah, I know you're taking your little cards for that. You got them sneaking into a third wild card spot. I don't want to hear it from you. But again, overcoming expectations. So if I had to guess who is going to win this award, again, I don't think it's as much of like the managerial decisions day in and day out. I really think this is more of like a team award. So I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if John Schneider does end up taking home the hardware. Don't want to take anything away from John Schneider because, again, he did make a lot of strides this year, but I think John Schneider will probably win this AL Manager of the Year award.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I don't care.
Yeah,
good for him. That's not really like that's where the conversation obviously starts from, but it's not where we're going to take it necessarily. We're not going to sit here and place our bets on, who do we think is going to win this one? Because everybody cares about Manager of the Year. No.
Yeah, and I'm not going to start rioting because John Schneider doesn't win the Manager of the Year either. It's kind of the same thing as like the Gold Gloves. I think the Gold Gloves for me even mean more than AL Manager of the Year. Like,
agreed.
Who cares about the manager? I like to give the players the accolades on the field. The manager isn't the guy throwing pitches. The manager isn't the guy swinging the bat. He can set his players up for success, but I like to give the players a little bit more of the accolades at the end of the day.
Yeah, so Carter, a little bit of a background here, right? John Schneider comes in after, growing up sort of managing with Vladdy and Bo sort of throughout the beginning of their careers. And this is before they obviously made it to the majors. And then having those two guys and some other guys come up through the system have probably seen John Schneider throughout their years. And now for him to be managing the big club, I think watching him progress from making some real bonehead decisions and honestly, even into this year, making some bonehead decisions, you were seeing them less is what I'll say. And that sometimes doesn't get helped by what team you have playing for you, right? Like if you have a bad team that isn't able to win very much, you don't give your manager much to work with. But on the other hand, when your lineup is fantastic and everybody is firing on all cylinders, it's hard for the manager to make a bad move, sort of. So it's a fine line of how you judge managers in this league. And there's a few points that I guess we have to give him credit for. Number one, I think he's a big contributor to why this clubhouse feels so tight. He is a guy that's for the players, by the players a little bit. He's a player's manager, and he wants the clubhouse to feel this tight. He wants to feel like, all these guys would go out there on the field and take a ball off the kneecap for each other. And I think that's something that John Schneider really instills into these guys well. And we're seeing the repercussions of that now with Shane Bieber wanting to stay. And I think John Schneider also helps guys move into a leadership role. I mean, when you talk about Vladimir Guerrero Jr., he was going to be in that role always, right? But, you talk about how even George Springer was able to come into a leadership role once again and lead this team. I think John is the start of where all of this originates from, of the closeness and the bond, because a lot of these guys did grow up together. And when you have two of your best players in the ball team and Bo Bichette and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. growing up together, it sort of sets an example for the rest of the guys and how the rest of the guys want to behave and act. And so, not just John Schneider, but Vladdy and Bo and George and Gausman and, even, guys like, even Scherzer, right, instilling wisdom. It goes to all of these things. It was a perfect storm of people that were able to make this team feel special to the fan base so far. So I did want to give him a little credit when it came to that, Carter. Obviously we're going to a little bit rip into him for some decisions he made as well, and that's going to happen. Where do you stand on the whole closeness? Is that a little bit of John Schneider's doing?
That is a lot of John Schneider's doing. It absolutely is. It's a lot of positives that comes with it, and it's his downfall as well. So, like, being a player's manager, such a fine line to walk. You want your clubhouse to be closed. You see all these other teams that when the manager loses the clubhouse, loses the dugout. We saw it with Charlie Montoyo, how that worked with this Blue Jays team. Nobody had faith in them. He's sitting there playing the bongos. Everyone's sick of looking at the guy. You lose a clubhouse, and your team does not want to play for the manager. Your team is probably not going to put out the full effort. You're not going to see, Addison Barger hustling to set first base. You're not going to see Vladimir Guerrero Jr. doing a dolphin dive to slide home. You're probably going to see a lot of lazy plays, almost like the Luis Robert treatment, what is happening in Chicago right now with the White Sox. Not a lot to play for over there. So with John Schneider, a guy that, again, looks like a little bit intimidating. An intimidating manager, a bigger dude, a guy that does have a soft heart at the end of the day. But first impressions, you look at John Schneider, you probably don't want to mess with him too much unless you're, Max Scherzer and you're a psychopath by yourself. But with John Schneider, again, he's been a guy that has always had his players' backs. And that's one of my favorite things about John Schneider is that even when it was Brendan Little who threw some horrific pitches, Sir Anthony Dominguez, Shane Bieber, it was never John Schneider saying, oh, it was this guy's fault. He's got to execute better. He's got to make better pitches. You might say that a little bit after the fact, like, throwing in just some context, but majority of the time what he's going to do, he's going to say, hey, like that's on me. I put the guy in the situation. I got to do this better. I got to do that better. I got to make the right decisions. So he's a very stand-up guy in the sense where he's never going to throw his players under the bus, which is a huge thing in the dugout. Because if you go and you have a bad outing and then you go home and you watch the interviews and you see your manager completely throw you under the bus, that's not going to be good for the clubhouse feel. That's not going to be good for your mentality or your confidence as a pitcher. That's always going to be in the back of your head. Hey, if I mess up, what are my teammates? What is my manager going to be talking about? So credit to John Schneider for that, for riding or dying with his players.
Well, and Carter, I think we saw what kind of character John Schneider brings, right? And again, we are not sitting here saying that John Schneider doesn't make mistakes. He does. We've seen it. We've talked a lot about it. But I think one thing that shows what kind of person John Schneider is and the respect I've gained from him, it goes back to when they won the ALCS, Carter, right? His speech was, it's all about these guys behind me. These guys did everything. They left it all in the field. It was all about them. It's for them. It's by them. You take a look at what Dave Roberts said when the Dodgers won the NLCS, right? Everybody said we were going to ruin baseball. Let's go ruin baseball. You know, which of those sentiments hits home and wants guys to play for you? The evil empire, I guess we're going to call them now, the new evil empire.
Yeah, they've been embracing that role pretty well. So
Sure,
I got to give it a little bit
it's
of a hat tip, I guess, there.
yeah, it's funny. You got to give it to them for sure. Or the homegrown, what feels like small town vibe of the Toronto Blue Jays, right? Like I always talk about, it's a little bit the backyard baseball feel when I'd invite Carter out to the Diamond and we'd take our brothers and everything and we'd go and play. That's what this team feels like. It feels like Carter that one year where, they make you go and play single A ball if you're playing triple A ball because you need guys. But A ball sometimes is more fun because you get to play with all your buddies that you grew up playing with, right? That's what this team feels like. And that's a great thing. And you look at what what we talked about yesterday, Max Scherzer's wife talking about it, Shane Bieber and his wife talking about it. It's that feeling of loving the game again. And I think that's a huge takeaway. And what might lead to success here for the Toronto Blue Jays of being able to acquire different players. And to me, that all a little bit starts with John Schneider, including Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bichette as well.
Yeah, we know how important it is to have a close clubhouse. We know how important it is for these players to like each other, for these players to want to play for each other. You see it in the effort. You see it in the day-to-day meetings with these guys. It's a huge thing and maybe a little bit of an underrated thing when you look at some other teams around the league. But one thing with John Schneider is he is a player's coach, obviously, but that can be his downfall at times. There can be some issues with that as well, although there is a lot of positives. We're going to go into some of those negatives right after this short break.
Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. You guys know how much I love FanDuel. I talk about it literally all the time because when I'm winning at sports betting, it's fun to make money off of it. So yeah, I'll talk about it all the time. And one of the reasons I absolutely love it is, MLB season's over. I'm thinking, man, what am I going to do with myself? Well, why don't I'm not a big NBA guy. I want to get back into the NBA, and the NBA is back, so why not throw a couple bucks there? And there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of a game or want to ride a hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at an even bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when the team's making that late push. That's something I've really enjoyed. I think it's betting the overs in basketball to me on over on points. I love watching them and praying that they make a bucket. To me, that's fun. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head over to FanDuel.com to sign up today and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So, Carter, what it's going to come down to, realistically, is that not only the trust in me and you, the trust in the organization that John Schneider is the guy. And I think we can both sit here and admit he's going to get re-signed. He's going to get that. They made the World Series. You just got Shane Bieber back for the exact reasons we just talked about. I would find it pretty impossible or improbable that John Schneider does not get a contract.
Yeah, he signed a 3-year contract that ran through 2025, but there is a club option for the 2026 season. It's almost a guarantee that they will be picking up that club option for John Schneider. If you fire your manager after making the World Series and you see all of these reports about how close the clubhouse is, that would be a pretty easy way to probably make the clubhouse drift apart a little bit. Take one of the main keys, the main factors that probably brought that clubhouse together out of that situation, just would not make any sense. But as we said, John Schneider is a player's coach, and that can kind of lead to his demise as well, as we have seen a few times. Going back to the most obvious one in most recent history is the Brendan Little situation. John Schneider, after the game, said, Brendan Little has been one of my guys. He has been that guy that I've been trusting in these situations, which is good as a player's manager in a sense, because again, if you do go through some struggles, you don't want your manager to completely give up on you right away. However, if you are a player's manager, though, you might kind of let that leash extend a little bit too far. Everyone has heard this stat, but I'll bring it up again. This is the stat in the last 21 appearances before that Brendan Little start. Brendan Little had a 6.08 ERA and a 1.88 whip over the last 28 appearances. And John Schneider decided to throw him in the 8th inning of a Game 5 ALCS game. Everyone and their dog knew you should not be throwing Brendan Little in that situation. But John Schneider, being the player's coach he is, still believing in his guys to a fault at the end of the day, did obviously raise some concerns for a lot of Toronto Blue Jays fans. John Schneider definitely has his hate club. He definitely has a group of the fan base that are not the biggest John Schneider fans. But I will say that I think a lot of managers throughout the major leagues have that. I know Aaron Boone in New York, I think that's a little bit more of a majority. They are not the biggest fans of him over there. And you can look, again, across the division, across the league. There's a lot of managers that you might not be the most fond of with the fan base. The fan base might not like them, as much as you would hope with your manager. So there's been multiple other ones. There's a Jose Berrios one. Again, some people were complaining about Game 3, taking out Bichette, Alejandro, Kirk, Addison Barger, and George Springer was already hurt. There's some iffy decisions throughout the entire year. And just how John Schneider stayed to his tried and true formula. He liked to do the platoons. He liked to have certain guys in specific spots. And this can kind of go back to 2024 when we look at George Springer and how bad he was for, honestly, the entire season, but especially early on. I think we talked for 2 months about George Springer being in the leadoff spot and how horrific that was to that ball club. And when John Schneider was asked about that, what did he say? Oh, it's George Springer. He'll figure it out. I still believe in my guys. He'll figure it out. Fortunately, he did not figure it out. So while being a player's manager is nice, you don't want to give up on your guys. I think at some points it kind of can lead to some problems with John Schneider because he has the lack of taking these guys out of their spots when it's pretty obvious to everyone else in the fan base that they should not be performing in the certain situations that they are, whether it's higher leverage, lower leverage. Again, you just got to have a little bit better feel, I think, if you're John Schneider, just using your eyes and kind of just reading and reacting to what's happening in front of you.
Yeah, and I think the one good thing we've seen with John Schneider, so in regards to that, you're spot on. It's a good thing, but a bad thing. And I think the one good thing that we do see, not the only good thing we've seen with John Schneider, but one of them, is his ability to learn. And yes, maybe it's learning slowly, but he does learn from his mistakes eventually. And at some points, you got to trust your guys and you got to trust your gut. I mean, it doesn't matter what manager you are. Sometimes your hand gets pushed to one thing or the other. Now, yes, I don't know, Carr. This is a very I tossed this around in my head a little bit because at some moments I think back to the mistakes that he's made, and I think, is he the best guy for this job? But I think when all is said and done, and you look at it over a large scale of the positives in comparison to the negatives that John Schneider brings, I think you'd rather have this ball club be this tight and then go the other way and have it brutal, but maybe he doesn't make a bullpen decision that John Schneider. I don't know. It's a tough decision to make because which way is better for this team specifically. And a lot of this is very team oriented. What works for this group of guys, right? John Schneider may not work for the New York Yankees, but man, he seems to be working for the Toronto Blue Jays. So yeah, I don't know. I think this is a pretty easy decision for this club to keep him around. And I think the players would turn a bad eye to the organization if they now went and didn't decide to bring John Schneider back. I think that's just going down a bad rabbit hole.
I think that was a good point being made about like just different characteristics of different managers, how you should manage specific players. For example, like Max Scherzer, he wants to be told that he sucks. He wants to be told that he's not good enough so he can act on that rage, get it from what's inside of him and display that on the baseball field. But you have some other guys that might want to, kind of have like the soft parenting style of it and be like, oh, you'll get better. Come on. You'll figure it out and just be on the nicer end of things. So managerial styles are definitely a huge thing for John Schneider. And I think he's found this pretty good happy medium for the most part. Again, it's such a fine line to walk. Like you don't want to lose the player's trust, but you also want to do what's best for the team. But one thing I think that a lot of people would have trouble with, and like obviously I think I noticed as well, you've seen how quickly John Schneider's been to have the platoons, take guys out of the game later on, have pinch hitters, switch things up. Whether it's coming out of the bullpen, higher leverage, lower leverage, you would think that when it comes to like high leverage situations in terms of like closing pitchers or with the lineup stuff, we talked about George Springer, we talked about Vladimir Guerrero Jr. being 2-3, whatever it may be. You think he's so quick to pull those guys out of baseball games in the terms of platooning, but when he sees players struggling, again, he for some reason likes to take a little bit longer and I guess really assess the situation to make sure he's making the right one. But again, if he would just, make that decision a little bit quicker, again, read and react just a little bit faster. Again, it's a tough line to walk. I think that's where some people start to have trouble though, with what John Schneider is doing and some of the decisions that he makes.
Yeah, and that's totally fair. The bullpen call here, Carter, was always going to be a little bit of an of the sore spot when it comes to John Schneider. I think for the majority of this, the platoon option for him has worked out very well. And it just comes down to when to go to that next guy, when to pull the starter, when to, Jeff Hoffman's not having his best day. Maybe we get him out of there. And it's those quick decisions. It is the big question. But Carter, in saying that, we talk a lot about this platoon option, right? And him being very good with it. Well, you don't always want the platoon option to be the continual option. It was great for this year and it worked. But as you bring in other players and you bring in new guys, you can't always rely on that. You can't rely on all of these guys who have that kind of career season. So how is he going to adapt next year with some of these guys maybe not playing up to this kind of potential or other guys being brought in to replace some of these guys? That's where I get a little concerned because I'm like, is he going to revert back to what he thinks worked in 2025 and not learn and grow with a new group? I think that's going to be a little bit of a concern. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's something that's going to have to be discovered. But as a manager, it's like baseball is like a chess game, especially when you are a manager. You want to just deploy your pieces in the proper way. So I think with John Schneider, as much as it might be hard in like a personal level to be like, if Ernie Clement's not playing well or Nathan Lucas, whoever it may be, and you bring in another guy that's just significantly better. Like John Schneider, like at the end of the day, you got to put those personal relationships aside. You got to be able to make the right decisions for that baseball team. And I don't think that John Schneider is going to have a problem doing that. We kind of saw it after the Brayden Little situation. We saw him switch up Max Scherzer and Shane Bieber, which surprised a lot of people. Like John Schneider's not a guy that's necessarily going to listen to the media. He's not going to listen to the outside voices. He's going to be a guy that is going to stick tried and true to his formula. So the platoon thing that you brought up could be an issue. I could definitely see how, like, in certain situations, if these guys are similar or if there's like a slight advantage on one player to another, you might kind of draw back and go to the guys that he's more familiar with. But I think that there's like an obvious move where this guy's significantly better than the other guy, even though that, maybe it might be Ernie Clement that's been with the team or a fan favorite like Alejandro Kirk. Again, that's probably a bad example. But if there's a situation where he can upgrade and it's pretty obvious, I don't think he's just going to call on this is my guy. Like we have a good personal relationship. Just because of that, I'm going to keep him in the lineup. But definitely something that I wouldn't be I'm not calling anybody out if they're, scared that John Schneider is going to make the wrong decision or maybe, stick to tried and true with his formulas.
Yeah. There's a lot to be discussed. But Carter, I didn't want to just sit here and talk about John Schneider. There are other guys here a little bit that, we're probably going to have more conversations with as the offseason goes on. But another guy that should get a lot of credit. And I think we'll tell everybody who that is after this short break.
Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this sports season, whether it's you're following the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, or all of it. There's no better time to jump into the action. So luckily for me, I do have some NFL football on. I do have the opportunity to place some bets. So I got Bo Nix on my fantasy team. As you guys know, I'm always going to parlay my fantasy teams with some of my sports picks, whether it's on Prize Picks, FanDuel. You get the point of it. But this one, I'm obviously hammering the Prize Picks. I got Bo Nix more than passing yards. I got that stacked with Troy Franklin. I'm hoping that he gets a touchdown. That's a little bit of a riskier one, but I believe in my boy. I believe in Bo Nix, and I'm playing one of my close friends as well. So just a little bit more incentive on hopefully getting those picks right. You can download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. It's code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right.
So, Carter, another guy I obviously wanted to talk about that sort of has brought himself into this conversation is David Popkins. To me, Carter, this is a guy that came in and completely changed the way some of these guys swing the bat, their approach at the plate. I think one of the most overlooked, underrated additions to this Toronto Blue Jays 2025 team, and I was blown away with what he was able to do. And yes, not everything is 100% on him. of how good these guys did. Some of these guys just are having good years, and that's going to happen. But I think when you see a complete offensive overhaul from 2024 to 2025, you got to put a little bit of credit on this guy.
Oh, you absolutely have to. Like, we were a little bit bad in the past for not giving as much credit to the hitting coach and what they do. I mean, part of it was maybe because Gabriel Martinez had a horrific year. Maybe the offense had a horrific year. 2024, again, not a very fun year for Toronto Blue Jays baseball fans, but there's obviously a lot of significance on the hitting coach compared to what they did in 2024 and 2025. Just going into player specifics, George Springer just having a different swing, a launch angle, having that little bit of a tilt in his swing where has a better ability or a better chance of putting the ball in the air. Gimenez at one point in the season had a big leg kick. David Popkins talks to him, gets a little bit of a switch, goes into a toe tap, and Gimenez has a very good, I think it was only like 3 weeks since Gimenez, but you obviously saw that they were making tweaks throughout the season. Scouting reports, I mean, are obviously massive, like especially in that Dodgers series, in a World Series, in a playoff series. You're going to have to go in depth. You're going to have a very good game plan, whether they're going to throw fastballs early, have you breaking pitches, off speed, whatever it may be. Scouting reports are a massive thing. Obviously, the approach as well. If a guy's going to throw a lot of first pitch strikes, maybe you're more aggressive earlier on the count. If he's throwing balls, if he's going to throw a curveball early on the count, fastball early on the count. There's so many little things that having those scouting reports, having those approaches, and having a guy like David Popkins who knows pretty well what he's doing, that can definitely help out your baseball team. So, yeah, just whether your approach is game in and game out, the little tweaks throughout the game, again, seeing what these pitchers are doing to the hitters and making those little in-game adjustments. You got to give so much credit to David Popkins, and you got to give even more credit to some of these players that had those, career years and put what David Popkins taught them and put it to good use and use those approaches in games to help benefit the Toronto Blue Jays.
Oh, for sure. And I think he was a guy that me and you were pretty excited about to start the season too. Like, what was he going to come in and do? And I think it was his quote early in the year. This isn't exactly it. Obviously, this was months and months and months ago. But it pretty much said he looked at a lot of these players when he was hired and found a lot of interesting things he thought he could do with them to help improve their swings. And obviously, a lot of that worked. George Springer might be one of the biggest ones. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I mean, you can go up and down the list with these guys. There were a lot of guys that had great seasons. But Carter, I wanted to get your thoughts on one guy in particular, and that's Big Don. I know that some of these guys wanted to win. You see Bichette go give Don a hug after they lose that, and I think the guy that's been snake bitten his entire career, his role with this team. He was a guy that was a little bit on the outs for me. I thought, okay, when are they getting rid of Don Mattingly? Where are you at with Don now?
Yeah, they had to switch him to the bench coach from 2024 to 2025. So it almost felt like they were kind of blaming Don Mattingly for what happened in 2024. Honestly, I'm just going to lead off with this. I feel bad for the guy for going throughout his entire major league career, whether it's player, a manager, you name it. Got to the World Series for the first time, loses it in a very heartbreaking fashion. I'm not going to lie. I think Don Mattingly is just kind of there to make sure John Schneider doesn't do anything absolutely ridiculous. I don't know if Don Mattingly has this massive role within the dugout. I'm not entirely sure what this guy does. Maybe he's, a little bit of like a psychologist in that dugout. He's a little bit of a therapist helping the boys out when they're going up to the plate. Again, he's so experienced in the game of baseball. He's probably giving them little tidbits, little tricks throughout the baseball game of what he sees. Just having another guy that's been around baseball for so long, just having another set of eyes on the pitcher, on hitters, you name it. Having another guy that has the knowledge of baseball is so important to this baseball team and so important to any team in the major leagues. So again, I'm not exactly sure what he does on the day-to-day, but I got to give the guy credit. And maybe I'm just, I got to know. I got to ask Don. Maybe got to get Don Mattingly on the podcast and see what he does on the day-to-day for the Toronto Blue Jays.
I would love to have that conversation with Don. That would sound like an absolute blast. Another guy that, I'd like to have on to see what his day-to-day or maybe night-to-night looks like is Pete Walker. That would be an interesing one, wouldn't it?
A lot of beers. A lot of beers involved with that one, especially late nights, like you said.
Hey, we have a lot of beers, so we'd fit perfectly with them.
Well, yeah, we have a lot of beers, but we don't drink and drive. We encourage you guys to not drink and drive, obviously. So, yeah, don't learn from Pete Walker in that sense, but you got to enjoy yourself, obviously. All the pitchers talk about glowingly about how good Pete Walker is. Again, making those in-season adjustments, really just fixing players like Jose Berrios in 2023 when he was horrific, comes back and has a very good season. You look at Eric Lauer, you look at Bowden Francis at the end of 2024. So many different guys that Pete Walker, you got to give a lot of credit to helping them throughout the years. Yeah, Pete Walker, probably one of my favorite guys, one of my favorite coaches on the Toronto Blue Jays. Just a fun guy to watch, fun guy to listen to talk.
Yeah, me too, man. He seems like a little bit of just electric, right? And
That guy knows how to party too.
Goodness, that's never going to go away. Pete, yeah, he's a great dude, and I really do give him all the credit. I mean, another guy that pops into my head is Yusei Kikuchi. Just that he, there's some stuff that just works, right? And Pete can find those little things that can help you. And sometimes in baseball, it's one of those games that like a little thing can fix you and can get you back going again. So yeah, you know what, this coaching staff in general and management group and everything like that, they had a great season. And what that great season is going to do is get them all contracts again. So congratulations to them. I'm sure they're going to be back, like them or hate them. That's where we're at right now because they just made the World Series. So again, hopefully they can run it back and find new things and new ways to push this team to get them to that next level next season. And a lot of that will come with what happens in free agency. But Carter, my man, before we kick out of here, is there anything left that you want to say? Maybe an apology to Pete?
No, not quite.
Okay.
I mean, the guy, it's not a great decision. He'll probably be the first one to tell you that. But I'm going to end this episode a little bit in a lighthearted way. I think I found out what Don Mattingly probably does in the club, in the dugout, in the clubhouse. He's the guy that's telling John Schneider when to get kicked out. He's the guy that, I think it was Kevin Gausman, right? That threw out Jose Ramirez. He's the guy that's, making that call. He's the guy that told Yusei Kikuchi to absolutely truck Tyler Soderstrom at the Coliseum. He's making those type of decisions to elevate the boys, get the vibes up, and, get the people excited.
God, if I want that job, that sounds great.
No, I want the job where you're raking the air. That's what I want in the World Series.
If anybody saw that video, there's this grounds crew guy legitimately shoveling air. And it's like, if that's how I can get to the World Series, sign me up. Maybe I'll be like the Freeze or whatever they call him. I could be one of those for the Toronto Blue Jays where I just lose all the time, though.
Yeah, you would be the opposite of the Freeze. You would need medical attention halfway through running through from the line to the line. Like, that might not be a good scenario, but hey, it'd probably get you in shape pretty quickly.
That's right. Everybody, thank you so much for watching and listening to the podcast. We always appreciate it. We'll be back with you guys tomorrow. Hey, leave a comment on what you think about John Schneider, his season. Will he be back? Will he not be? I think the answer is pretty obvious there. But your thoughts and opinions, and we'll talk to you guys tomorrow.